Alright everyone, welcome back to another video. Last time we left off with the Red Army continues to advance in the Ukraine. Now, just like the last time, last video, I'm also going to leave a disclaimer at the beginning of this video. The next page I cannot show you. YouTube will potentially not like that very much, so I cannot show it to you. But I will describe it to you as I say, after I say there's a very little text blurb. They really want you to focus on the picture, but I am so sorry, guys. I cannot show you. This video will get taken down, potentially, and then I'll have to edit this out, and then you won't get to see it anyway. So, but I will describe it to you in ways that are YouTube friendly. And once again, I apologize, but that's the best I can do. So stick with me if you can. Or if you still want to. But this is all that it says. It says the German atrocities in Ukraine. These are Russian peasants killed by the Germans in their retreat to Rostov-on-Don. Now, the picture that it shows a mother and two younger children. One child looks like they're just looking up at the sky, things like that. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with the child, potentially. The other child, his face has been disfigured, and he's gravely disfigured. The mother appears to also have been wounded in the abdomen. There seems to be a decent wound in the abdomen. In the background, there is I can't tell if it's a man or a woman. I assume it to be a man who is missing a leg now. So, but these pictures are just awful. Awful. It really does try to hammer home the point that this is an atrocity. There we go. Allied navies improve anti-submarine measures. February 1943. Growing success against U-boats. During the most critical period of the war at sea, the enemy employed packs of U-boats to lurk in the paths of Allied convoys. These new methods of the Germans, however, were successfully countered, and the 600-mile danger gap in the Atlantic became less hazardous. The great strain under which U-boat crews worked is evident from the picture right, which shows a crew waiting in suspense, listening to depth charges. And yeah, you can see them. They're all just kind of sitting there like, oh, crap. You know, you don't know. If there's a depth charge, you could be sitting there and next thing you know, boom. It is very hard and a dangerous job. And then to the left here, it shows an Allied destroyer about to drop its depth charges in an endeavor to bag one of the Atlantic prowlers. And yeah, obviously, put depth charges down, blow up at the depth at which a U-boat would be. Hopefully get them. You could usually tell because what would happen is you'd go boom, and then you'd see a huge rush of bubbles to the surface. And that's all the air and stuff leaving the submarine going to the surface of the water. American forces temporarily set back in Tunisia. February 14th, 1943. U.S. troops fall back in Tunisia. On February 14th, while the 8th Army was pushing forward to Medine, after capturing Ben Gardane, the Germans launched a strong counterattack against the relatively lightly held American lines in the central part of Tunisia. The attack was delivered by a German army division in 2 columns, supported by masses of fighter aircraft and dive bombers. The Germans quickly overran the advanced American positions and completely isolated some artillery and infantry units. Counterattacks somewhat delayed the enemy's advance, but Axis reinforcements were brought up in very strong force, with the result that the U.S. troops were compelled to evacuate the Gafsa oasis, and almost three of their forward airfields, one at Sibilita and 2 at Telepiti. After 4 days of fierce fighting, the Americans were pushed back about 35 miles from the advanced positions they had previously held. The pictures show, top left, the American-built Priest gun howitzer in action. What? Top left. I don't think that's correct. You can see there. Those guns in action. Bottom left, troops moving up through the enemy barrage. You can see there, obviously, is the enemy barrage right there, or at least part of the barrage. You can see the troops here laying down, trying to either slowly move up or just get down so that any debris would potentially go over top of them and not hit them. But they're still making sure to keep gun positions up, and that's as they move up. And then, to the right here, a camouflaged British gun. Yeah, obviously have good camouflage. It helps when, especially when an air raid happens. You know, if it's well camouflaged, the enemy's not going to really be able to strike at your artillery if they don't see it. German assault on Thala stemmed by Allied forces. February 21st, 23rd, 1943. Desperate fighting in Tunisia. On February 21st, having advanced 30 miles since they moved out from the Fade Pass, the Germans pierced the new, shorter lines held by the U.S. forces with a heavy Panzer attack. Thereafter, they increased their pressure, and their mechanized and infantry columns made 3 strong assaults against Sibibab, Thala, and towards Tebessa. The strongest attack, made with over 70 tanks and infantry, brought them to within a few miles of the key mountain town of Thala. British tanks and infantry were sent as reinforcements. After desperate fighting, the Allies succeeded in holding the Axis thrust, inflicting severe casualties and taking prisoners. On the first day, a score of enemy tanks were knocked out. The next day, the British brought into action, for the first time, a number of 40-ton Churchill tanks, and these inflicted considerable losses on the enemy. In one of these tank battles, 9 Churchills took on 14 German tanks and destroyed 4 of them. Only 1 of the British tanks were lost. On February 23rd, the Germans were forced to withdraw. Allied success in recapturing the ground they had lately lost, which was largely due to heavy attacks by their combined air forces from bases in the rear. The pictures show above British infantry attacking. You can see the British moving up. So the British had to come reinforce the Americans. The Americans were not... They weren't very trained. I mean, they were, but they weren't battle trained. And so they don't do as well against the Germans like the British have been. But the British have been war-hardened against them, things of that nature. So they kind of look down on the Americans for this, but America will prove itself later in this war. And then to the right, British infantry. Oh, no, my bad. How they have this, it's a little confusing. To the right here is a shell bursting on a German tank. So we can see right there, literally the shell just blowing up. Smoke everywhere. That tank's probably either out of action or they hit him with a smoke screen by accident. But it's probably just an out of action tank now. But that's going to do it for this video. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a comment. Tell me what I can improve on. I always appreciate your feedback. And as always, subscribe. It really does help out the channel. Thank you.